as much as you want.
Okay. Oh, we've had an error going live. So we're live on YouTube. Are we live on LinkedIn? Okay, we're live on LinkedIn now. All right. So it looks like we're live here. So why do we need evals? My mama raised me to have confidence. No. Hello, everyone. My name is Yujian Tang. This is part of our weekly Tech Talk series. We're actually going to shift these to Tuesdays starting next week. So this is our last Wednesday one. Welcome to the stream. As everybody kind of trickles in here, I'd love to have some comments to tell us where you're coming in from. Where are you guys watching from? I'm in Seattle. Josh, where are you?
I'm in Washington, D.C.
So we got coverage from east to west coast here. Hopefully we'll have some people from...
Yeah, coast to coast Washingtons.
Yes, coast to coast Washingtons. Yes. So hopefully we'll have some people from somewhere other than SF as well. I see there's a few people kind of trickling in on LinkedIn and YouTube. Okay, someone's from San Jose. Someone else from San Jose. Oh, hey, Sujata. Yeah, I remember you from our the OSS for AI talk, or not OSS for AI. That's this thing, the OSS NA talk when in a couple weeks ago. So, all right, I think a lot of the people who are going to come for this talk have trickled in here. So I think we're sitting at around like 20, 30 people in here. So I'm going to let Josh introduce himself. So Josh, please feel free to introduce yourself. And then I'll talk a little bit about Milvus, and then we'll kind of get into the larger presentation.
Awesome. Sounds good. As Eugene mentioned, I'm Josh. I'm an open source engineer and developer advocate at TruEra. And really excited to talk to you guys today about how to evaluate LM applications. To start, I have this kind of GIF up, and why do we need evals? And it's because we can't all be like Hannibal Buress, or at least maybe when we're deploying LM applications, maybe we shouldn't be like Hannibal Buress. And we need something to really give us that confidence. So we make sure we're ready for production. So how do we get that confidence before production? Kind of three key ingredients here. So we want to identify success metrics. So what are the evals we want to use? What's really necessary to really make our application successful for our users? How do we validate the evals and make sure they're measuring the right thing? How do we align with them with human preferences? And then last, how do we experiment and improve on these metrics and make sure they're good enough to give us the confidence to make us like Hannibal Buress. So for identifying the success metrics, we probably want more than just thumbs up, thumbs down, and yeah, definitely more than 5 checks.
By the way, this thing is something that ChatGPT uses. Have you used this? Do you ever use this on ChatGPT, like the thumbs up, thumbs down?
Not so much. Like if it's really bad, I will. But
that's how the RLHF stuff, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of apps use this. I know like Dosi uses thumbs up, thumbs down. I think Ellipsis uses thumbs up, thumbs down on like talking kind of like code helpers.
I haven't tried it, so.
Okay, cool. And kind of there's a few reasons why we want more than thumbs up, thumbs down. And one reason is because you just need a lot more test cases if you only have one data point on each application execution. It'd be really nice if we had a bunch more data points so we didn't have to have so many test cases. And then the second one is because if we only have the thumbs down, we don't know what was bad about the application. How do we improve it? Do we need to have better retrieval? Do we need to have better generation? Maybe the query augmentation or query translation went wrong. There's a whole bunch of things that can go wrong, and which is thumbs down, we don't know how to make it better. And that leads us to this core problem of how do we know how well the internals of our application perform? And that's because our application is oftentimes a black box, especially when we use frameworks like LangChain or LlamaIndex or DSPY. There can be a lot of things that happen inside the application, and we don't always have a view of what those things are. We don't know which tool gets used. We don't know maybe what is the tool input that got passed to that tool. If it's a RAG, we don't know all of the different retrievals that might have happened. All we see is query goes in and response comes out. By kind of illuminating these internals, we get access to a whole bunch of additional metrics that we can use to measure the performance of our application. So things like context, relevance, and groundedness for RAGs. And for advanced RAGs, we can add in things like query translation. And for agents, we can use tool input relevance, tool use relevance, and a whole bunch more, depending on how complex your application is. So which metrics should you choose? So it's useful to start with business metrics. Think about if your application is an e-commerce assistant, how do you present the right products to your customers and really make the sale? If your application is trying to help your users use your technical product, is it solving the issues or errors that your customers are having, and which metrics align with this success? It can be useful to think about these in 3 buckets. So the first is honest, and this is really catered around the core function of your application. So things like, is it hallucinating, or is it actually responding with the correct answer? Is the summarization useful and good and including everything that it's supposed to? Are we using the right tool? If somebody asks for the weather, is it giving the weather? That sort of thing. The second bucket is around harmlessness. And this can be especially important for external facing applications, especially in high stakes domains where we're relatively risk averse, things like hospitals or banks. We're really concerned about leaking PII or responding in toxic ways. And then the last is making sure the application is helpful. So is it maybe conforming to your brand or some style that you really want your LM to conform to? Is it responding coherently and concisely, or is it kind of rambling on like we know LMs tend to do? Is it using the word delve a lot? There's a whole bunch of things that we want to check for. Yeah, Yujian.
I've seen like quite a few posts on LinkedIn and Twitter recently where people have been using delve. And every time I see this word delve, I'm just like, this person is ChatGPTing their post.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my wife was actually watching a video yesterday where somebody like said the word delve, and it was crazy. I was like, I don't even know what's going on here. Like, is this ChatGPT? Has it made it? Are the voice speech generations that good now?
There's some really good speech generations. I've seen some I guess like deep fakes of like rappers and like politicians basically saying things they've never actually said. It's actually getting a little bit scary.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's like tons of products kind of popping up around this too, and like product assistants or like SDRs that are just AI, all kind of stuff.
And now I feel the need to not say delve when I give my presentations. Even though I never really say delve, I usually say dive. Because I worked at Amazon, so I say dive deep, right? But I now feel the need to not say the word delve. And so if you ever see me saying delve, you know that I've been taken over by an AI deepfake. There you go. That's how you're going to.
Yeah, if there's a word that's been unduly punished by AI, the word is delve for sure. Cool. Okay, so as we're kind of thinking about all these metrics, we want to think kind of across these different buckets, really make sure our application is honest, harmless, and helpful. And all these metrics are supported by TrueLens, which I'll talk about later. So once we've selected our evaluation metrics, how do we go about validating the evals? How do we make sure that when our evaluation metrics are really measuring what we think they're measuring, and they're aligned with human preference. So there's this really great paper that came out recently from Berkeley called "Who Validates the Validators?" And the answer here is humans. It's you. You validate the validators. And the way they do this process they call eval-gen, I think aligns really nicely with how we've been thinking about it with our customers. Is you want your human evaluators to do this, come up with the same evaluation metrics that you want your AI to come up with. And then once we have both our human-generated metrics and our AI-generated metrics, then we can just see how they align, create this alignment report card, and figure out which metrics are lacking and which metrics are kind of up to snuff. And when metrics are not good enough, some ways we've seen to improve metric alignment is including additional context about your application in and passing it to the evaluator. So in some cases, the LLM or the LLM in the core application has all this additional information about maybe your product, maybe your business, maybe the context. But that information isn't always passed to the evaluator. So the evaluator can, with the information it has, it seems like your LLM is hallucinating, but really it's just that your LLM has more data than your evaluator does. So including some of that additional data to pass to the evaluator can be really crucial in getting a good evaluation. The second here is to ignore phrases or pieces of the LLM response that you don't expect to be grounded. So the LLM response, maybe you always wanted to start with like kind of a key phrase. I've been watching Better Call Saul a lot lately, and he always has this kind of tagline he starts every call with. Maybe you want your LLM to respond to something like that before it actually says anything meaningful. You wouldn't expect that like first phrase to be grounded, but you don't want your metrics to be penalized for that either. And the last kind of useful way I'll mention as just a sample on how you can improve your metric alignment is to reduce the resolution of the evaluator. So LLMs can't always tell or discern the difference between, say, like 10 or 11 levels of goodness or relevance or groundedness. And instead, maybe they can just tell the difference between really not relevant and really relevant, or maybe a low, medium, high. So changing the resolution and allowing your LLM to choose between a smaller amount of buckets can be really powerful in making a more clear difference between these evaluation levels.
I have a question about this last one here.
Mm-hmm.
The reduced resolution of the evaluator, is this a new one? I feel like I've seen a lot of scores that are between like 0 and 1 that'll be like 0.7 or 0.3 or 0.9 or whatever, but usually it's like between 0 and 1. Is this something new that you guys came up with, or is this just I haven't been paying enough attention?
Yeah. So we're this is kind of something we've been experimenting with for maybe a month or two, and we're rolling it out, I think, this week. And basically how it works is kind of two phases. So when we go out to the LLM, we want to ask the LLM to just rate from like 0 to 2 or 0 to 3. Basically have the user choose if you want to have less resolution, then you can specify that. And when we ask the LLM to rate that particular quality of your response, we'll just ask on that smaller range. And then secondly, we'll just change the normalization. So we're normalizing. So you still end up with 0 to 1, but the internal process to get there had a different resolution.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. Well, I think this is really good timing then if you guys are releasing this week. Are there going to be any white papers or anything coming out with this that we should be on the lookout for?
We'll definitely tweet about it. We'll talk about it in Slack, and happy to take other questions on it.
Very cool.
Sweet. Yeah, really good question. Yeah, really excited about that feature, and I think it'll be really powerful in kind of gaining confidence in your evals along the way to gaining confidence in your application. So once we've gained confidence in our evals, then we can just experiment to improve along these metrics. There's a lot of levers we can pull, a lot of different configurations we can try in improving our application and improving our evaluation metrics and feedback scores. In RAGs, we can do a lot of things to better construct our vector database. I think Yujian probably has a lot of thoughts here. I think like the most powerful one I've seen is just like improving your pre-processing. Really making sure you're kind of getting the useful data out of your raw data and getting the right things into your vector database, I think can be by far the most powerful thing you can do to improve your RAG.
For sure, yes. Whenever I'm actually doing, I'm doing a course on advanced RAG for LinkedIn Learning right now. And so the three things I talked about at the beginning, the first three things, I think you've included two of them in here. The index distance metric, I didn't even think to make that its own thing, but that is totally very important. I actually just talked about this last night. I'm like, I've been raging about how cosine similarity is not a good similarity for, I don't know, months now. I've been raging about this. But yeah, chunk size, chunk overlap, like that kind of stuff, super important to maintain the right amount of context in your embeddings. In your, I guess, chunks, in your text, in your data. And then the selection of your embeddings is also incredibly important. You have to have the right embeddings. If you use the wrong embeddings model, you're going to get bad results. And so these two things are two of the most important things. And then one thing that I would add on top of this, it might be in here, it's not in here. Okay. One thing that I would add on top of this as well is just like the metadata that you pick. And so there's like different ways you can embed your different metadata. So Llama Index has talked about this. You can do things where you're embedding like the sentence, but you're actually going to return the whole paragraph, so you have like more context. And then other things where you're embedding the whole paragraph, but you're going to return each sentence one by one, so that you can have more granularity in picking the text that you want to respond. So, but yeah, I think this is a very, very good overview of like ways you can put things into your vector database to make better experiment tracking.
Yeah, awesome. And when you mentioned the metadata, what are some of the kind of key metadata pieces that are like most useful for retrieving that right context?
Yeah, I think something that's come up recently that I've seen is like publication date. You want things that are, if you want things that have been published within a recent period, then you're going to want to play with the publication date, right? So that, and then maybe you want things from a specific author. And so in that case, you're going to want to be able to filter by author. And then something else that Milvus implemented last year, or maybe earlier this year, that I remember I was raging about this too, because I was like, who the hell is going to use group by where you're going to get distinct documents? Like you can just do this anyway. And then I was like, oh no, actually this is hard to do unless you implement it like this. But if you want unique documents where you say, I want to make sure that I'm citing multiple sources from multiple people, then you'll want to do something like that. And then, the document title is also incredibly important. So these are some of the important pieces of metadata that are, good to include. Someone else has asked this question. What is wrong with MLU and other state-of-the-art metrics? Have you heard of MLU, Josh?
I think MMLU is the one I know about. I don't know. Maybe I'm like mixing my acronyms. But I think in general, the kind of state-of-the-art metrics are like fine for like benchmarking an LLM as a whole. But what you really care about when you're developing, trying to get to production is how does the application as a whole perform for my domain, for my context, for my users. I don't care if the LM is good for answering signed questions or if it scores really well on the MCAT. I want to know, can it answer questions about my product when I give it useful context from my database? Is my retrieval happening correctly? And are all these things combining well to provide a good user experience?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is like the benchmarks, MMLU or MTAB or whatever. All these benchmarks, they're great for seeing like general use cases, but then from there you kind of have to test it out to see how well it does on your own specific data set.
Yeah, 100%. And just going back to the metadata a little bit, I think it's like a really interesting subject for a lot of people. I think one other way I've seen this implemented is kind of using ensemble and like specialized retrievers. So maybe you have kind of a few different specialized retrievers that where each one is tuned to retrieve particular types of documents or documents from particular like domains, and then you can have an ensemble or maybe a retriever router that chooses which retriever to go to, or maybe retrieves from multiple, and then can use those optimized retriever to then pass to the LLM.
Yeah. Ensemble retrievers are definitely something that are becoming more popular. Llama Index has released some, and I think LangChain as well has released some different, what are they called? The modules, classes, objects, whatever, different functions that will do this internally that you can kind of put together inside of these frameworks. On top of the ensemble retriever too thing is like, I don't know if you've heard of this, Josh. There's like the popularity of graph-based RAG is starting to rise as well. I don't know if you've seen anything on your side for this, but we're actually having on this series, we're having a talk on graph-based RAG later this month. Oh no, early next month, June 4th, and then another one with a database that combines graph and vector data as well. Oh, and also there's a question from the audience. I think this is about this is a follow-up question to the other metrics, and I think the answer to this is yes. But Josh, I'd also like to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, definitely. Custom metrics are really useful. I think it kind of maybe it depends on what you mean by custom. I think in some ways with the LM explosion, like the core challenge is that we got really good at coming up with metrics for traditional machine learning, but we had to define a whole new set of metrics to measure how our LM applications are performing. And a lot of these can be kind of fuzzy or subjective. So we've done a lot of work with TrueLens in defining a lot of these metrics so you can have them out of the box. But there's always more work to do, more metrics to define, and a really long tail of metrics. So custom metrics on the developer side is one way to really extend that long tail and have metrics that are useful for your context.
I think there's one more question that we can go through before we kind of try to get back on track here.
Yeah.
So someone has asked about the graph-based RAG. How are edges relationships defined? I'm just going to tell you, you should just come to the webinar and you'll get to learn then.
Nice. Check it out.
Yes. Thank you. I planted that guy in the audience.
So one quote I want to really highlight here that kind of from a customer that's been really successful in implementing this whole process is Ravi from Equinix used TrueLens to add metrics, and particularly I want to highlight that they did go through this process where they had the human evaluators and they really aligned those auto metrics, those LLM generated metrics with the human preference data and with the human generated metrics, and use some of these techniques to make that alignment. So in particular, I think the one to call out is reducing the resolution of the metrics. So that can be accomplished with either custom metrics or with the new feature we're rolling out later this week on directly changing that resolution. So I've kind of alluded to it kind of throughout this talk. What is TrueLens? TrueLens is an open source project to track and evaluate LM experiments. And it works by connecting TrueLens to your application so we can log the entire application trace, all of the different spans and components that happen inside of your application. We can add feedback functions to evaluate the quality of the application, things like context relevance, tool selection, all of those different metrics that you decided to use for your application. And then we can connect it to the TrueLens dashboard to explore the different records, evaluation results, and really find the best version of our app. And TrueLens has really broad support for LLM applications. It supports RAGs, even advanced RAGs with things like query augmentation or ensemble retrievers and all that good stuff that we sidecard into. Agents, fine-tuning experiments, and we have integrations with leading frameworks, Llama Index, LangChain, Pinecone Canopy. I think our latest is NVIDIA NeMo guardrails we're integrated with. So lots of ways to plug in your application and get that rich set of trace observability and evaluation metrics. And last, you can run these feedback functions with any model. Everybody's really opinionated on, I have to use open source. I'm only confined to some model garden, or maybe I have to use OpenAI because they're the soda and that's what I should use. I don't really care which model you want to use. We support it with TrueLens, so you can have that choice in running these feedback functions.
Someone has asked a question. So this will be interesting for you. So they say TrueLens looks great, and it does. Where does weights and biases kind of fit in on this whole scene? It looks like you might have a little bit. No, I don't see the logo, but it looks like you might have something to say about it on this slide.
Yeah, I'm not super opinionated on kind of where weights and biases fits in the landscape. I think as a whole, maybe they're a little more oriented towards like traditional machine learning, but I'll be honest, I'm not a weights and biases expert for sure.
Me neither.
Yeah, so just to kind of step back and talk about what the life cycle of building some of these applications looks like. And this kind of combines with the kind of the secret sauce ingredients that we talked about before, is that we want to first evaluate our application with reliable, comprehensive, and extensible evals, really making sure our application is performing well across these different success metrics. We want to track these metrics over time over our different LLM experiments. And as we change these levers and make edits to these configurations, how is our application performing across all of these different metrics? And when we get to production, how do we monitor in a way that's scalable, cost-effective, and with low latency? And I think a question people ask a lot here is, how do you get a really big kind of latency hit in having to get these evaluation metrics on your application run? And the answer to that is it's up to you. So if you want to wait to get your response passed back to the user and first generate the metrics and ensure that your response is good enough, you can do that. And obviously then you take the latency hit. But kind of the default treatment is that we won't hold up your application, and instead we'll just asynchronously kick off the evaluation metric computation, and then serve those to you when it's ready in more of a kind of a passive mode. Last, here's the QR code to go try out open source TrueLens. I think I'd love to get into a bunch more questions. I think there were some really good ones that we had before. And definitely check us on GitHub, give us a star, request a feature, join the Slack community, all that good jazz.
Cool. So we'll take this time audience questions. But before the audience gets tuned to these questions, I wanted to see if you could just go back a slide here.
Yeah.
This slide. Yeah, no, this one. Yes, this one right here. So when you talk about like kind of like TruEra, TrueLens coming in to do these evaluations, this tracking, the monitoring stuff. Can you show us like what like a dashboard for this could look like? Do you have anything like ready to kind of like go for this?
Yeah, definitely. Let me pull that up. So here's our standard TrueLens dashboard, and this is really focused on those experiments. So once we've chosen our metrics, so you see kind of a set of 4 metrics shown here. Then we can track the performance of these metrics across our different application versions. So each time we change one of those configurations, maybe we try a different retrieval method. The one being shown here is that sentence window method, which is the one Yujian mentioned, where you're retrieving a particular sentence, but then expanding to get the context around that sentence. A super useful way to feed good context to your LLM. So this is the TrueLens dashboard. It's running locally and is totally open source, and you can run and install from PyPy. Yes, free to use, open source, all that great stuff. Everything you're seeing right now is free and open source. So here's the leaderboard, and then if we want to learn more about a particular application version, we can dive in and select the application. We can click on a record and see what is the input and output of this particular record. Here you see somebody asked, does it matter who's at fault to be compensated when injured on the job? And the LM comes back with this response, but we should really look at the evaluation metrics to see if this is any good. So here we have a groundedness metric. It looks like this response is grounded in the retrieve context that came from our vector store. And we have a really clear supporting evidence from that knowledge base, where the statement sentence that the LM says is that it doesn't matter who's at fault to be compensated when injured on the job. And we have supporting evidence that says workers' comp programs were originally intended to be no-fault systems and therefore litigation-free. So that's pretty good, clear evidence. And then we also have additional metrics like context relevance that we talked before. So here we can see what are the exact retrieved contexts that are passed back to the LLM, and are these context chunks actually relevant to our user query? So keeping that in mind, we saw in our first version, we sometimes have low context relevance. Groundedness is also not as high as it could be. And we can employ different and better retrieval methods, such as sentence windowing, to really iterate and improve on these metrics. And one kind of nice bonus of sentence windowing is it can also just reduce the context size that we're passing back to the LLM. So this can have really nice cost and latency benefits as well, in addition to the performance improvement.
Very cool. I always think this dashboard is interesting to see. There's so many different, I guess, like stats to look at when you're thinking about this kind of LLM eval stuff. Do you have any suggestions on how we might optimize or balance or even if it's possible to optimize all 3 of the context, the relevance, the groundedness stuff, or possibly balance any of that when it comes to building these RAG apps?
Yeah, I think definitely improvements to, especially when it comes to RAGs, improvements to one component of the RAG triad can often benefit all 3. So if you're giving more relevant context back to your LLM, then the LLM is less likely to hallucinate. LLMs often hallucinate when they don't have the sufficient context passed into their context window, and instead to answer the question. So then to really meet the user's request, they have to come up with something from their pre-training data, and that's when they're most likely to hallucinate. And you also get more relevant answers, which helps your answer relevance leg of the triad when we have that good context and good retrieval. So yeah, definitely starts with having a really good retrieval as the kind of base of any successful RAG.
Totally makes sense. Someone has said, how can I reach you for further details? I think the slide that you have up with your the QR code probably makes sense for this one.
Yeah, definitely the QR code, and maybe I'll drop a link. So we have a Slack community. You'll see it on linked on TrueLens.org, and I'll put it. Maybe I'll put it in the private chat here, and Yujian can put it out.
Oh, yep.
Oh
yeah, I forget, you have to sign up with an account in order to put this up. Otherwise, let me also put this up on the LinkedIn.
So the link that Yujian's putting out is a link to our Slack community, the AI Equality Forum. Me and the other TrueLens developers, along with 1,700 TrueLens users, are always hanging out there, answering questions and talking about how to build better RAGs and how to build better LM applications as a whole.
Great. Let's see if there's any other questions. Someone has a question for me about manual evals, I think. Do you have any thoughts on manual evals, Josh?
Yeah, I think human evals, I assume that's kind of what the same as a manual eval. Definitely can be useful in conjunction with the automated evals. If you're like early in that process, they're useful in aligning to make sure that your AI evals are measuring the right thing. And then even later, or once you're deployed to production, they can be useful just to get another metric and really flag when your users are not having a good experience. I think we talked about it before, like users and people in general, like so rarely press the thumbs up or thumbs down. They so rarely like leave a review. You really want to like do something when in those rare cases that they do. So having that metric definitely is super useful.
Yeah, awesome. I think it looks like the audience is trickling out of questions. If you want to comment on anything else, we can comment on some other things. Otherwise, I think it's totally fine to just wrap it here.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Yeah, I think we could just wrap it here. It was really fun. Great to see you, Yujian. Thanks for organizing and really making it happen.
Yeah,
fun to hang out with this audience, and lots of great questions coming in. So
yeah, awesome. Thank you guys all for coming, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday. All right, I'm going to end this.